That radio chick Cheryl Lee here. Welcome to the Still Rocking It podcast, where we'll have music, news reviews and interviews with some of our favourite Australian musicians and artists. Hot off the back of their APRA Award nomination for Most Performed Rock Work for their song The First Time, Eskimo Joe are thrilled to unleash their banger new single, Miracle Cure. Founding member Kav says Miracle Cure is about the search for redemption and how only love can pull us back from the edge. With 6 studio albums, sales in excess of 750,000 in Australia alone, the band has seen 3 of those albums debut at number 1 on the ARIA charts, with the juggernaut Black Fingernails Red Wine shining for a monster 62 weeks in the ARIA chart top 50. Foreign Land from their 4th album, bringing home 2 APRA awards for most played song on Australian radio and the best rock song of 2010. 35 ARIA nominations to their credit so far, a number only surpassed by 4 others: Silverchair, Powderfinger, Kylie Minogue and John Farnham. We were lucky enough to catch up with founding member, singer, songwriter, bass guitarist Kav Temperley in the Zoom room today. To catch up on podcasts from other favourite artists, simply go to thatradiochick.com.au. I'd like to welcome into the Zoom room today, for the first time, Eskimo Joe's Kav Temperley. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm waiting for the round of applause.
And the crowd goes wild.
Very well, thank you, yes.
Thank you for joining us this morning. I know you're a very, very busy man. We've got some exciting news to talk about, brand new song. But before we go forward, can we maybe just go back a little bit? Firstly, Kavian, I've never heard that name before. Where does that come from?
Well, it's an Indian name, and there's a few different variations of the same names. And I've never met another Kavian before, but there is Kavi, which is like another version of it, and there's Kavisha, which is like a female version of it. And I believe that Kavi was a famous Indian poet from back in the day.
There you go. I wonder whether that was instrumental in you becoming a poet.
Well, it's all worked out well for me.
I'm going to ask you, and I think I probably know the answer to this question, because I think you left school at age 16 to concentrate on writing music. When did you realise that music was in your DNA and music was your passion? Are you from a musical family?
I mean, I guess I'm from a musical family. I mean, my mum kind of played a bit of music. My brother played a little music, but it was never like this is going to be your career. But I was really lucky enough to grow up in the small town of Fremantle, which, has given birth to lots of great bands. In the tiny little bit of real estate that is Fremantle, you've got Tame Impala, John Butler Trio, San Francisco, to name a few, and Eskimo Joe. And so I think growing up here, it was if you wanted to be a professional artist of any description, you would just say that. And no one walking down the street would say to you, well, what are you going to do for a real job? Everyone would just kind of go, oh, great. Yeah, that's what you're going to do. Fantastic. So there was never a conversation of well, you probably need to knuckle down and get an actual career, It was just accepted that you could be a professional musician, which is great. But as far as deciding or knowing when I was going to be a muso, what kind of came first is my desire for storytelling. I loved telling stories from a really young age. I thought at one point in time I'd become a writer, but clearly I was way too lazy to write a whole entire book. I think there was probably a crossover between me wanting to write stories and then discovering that, when I played songs, girls probably paid me attention. So I was just yeah, okay, well, maybe this music thing is good. And of course, the deeper I got into it, the more I was just it's not about the girls, it's about the music. Kind of my style of songwriting that emerged was more about this kind of Dear Diary, I would do these kind of reports from the war front of my life. And, it probably wasn't until, I guess, the Black Fingernails Red Wine album that I started to dress those songs up a little bit differently and still tell these real stories, but just maybe give them a bit of a vessel that could kind of go to a larger audience.
You're telling me that there was never actually any plan B if this music thing hadn't panned out for you?
I just started playing music. And the one thing my mum said to me when I first started, she was like, okay, if you're going to do this, you have to do it 100%. So ever since that day, I've done it 100%.
Good on you, Mum. Good.
Yeah.
You caught up with Stuart in high school. So how did you likely lads meet?
Well, kind of. I mean, he actually moved next door to me when I was about 5 years old. And our parents, were mates. And so we kind of spent a lot of, childhood hangs together. And then, we kind of did our own thing, but it wasn't, till towards the end of high school that we came back together again. And I was already deep into the songwriting and, deciding to be a muso thing. Me and Joel had already formed a bad funk metal band, that was doing the rounds. But Stu was on his way to buy himself the latest Nintendo, and he segued past like cash converters. And when he got home, he bought himself a guitar instead. So that was kind of like a sliding doors moment for him. And then when I discovered that he was getting into music too, we started jamming. I mean, I had my thing with Joel, but we started jamming, and because me and Stu connected on such a kind of, brother-like level, we'd known each other all our lives. We started playing music, versions of our favourite songs at little cafes around Fremantle. At a certain point in time, when I was about 19, Joel kind of came in, and then the chemistry between the three of us was just like, it was just obvious. If you've been in different bands and had different combinations of people, when you get the right chemistry of people, it's just really obvious. So we just knew straight away that this was easy. And, here we are almost 30 years later, still doing it.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
Here it is, the title track from Black Fingernails Red Wine, the third studio album by Eskimo Joe from 2006. The album became their first number one on the Australian ARIA albums chart and certified 4 times platinum. Then back to speak to Kav Temperley, founding member of Eskimo Joe, very soon.
Black fingernails, red wine, I wanna make you all mine.
That's a lot longer than a lot of marriages.
Yes, absolutely.
Well done. And it's been, the static lineup, really, the whole time.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the three of us who write and record everything. But, when we go out on the road, we have to try and play the records live because we're, absolute tragics to trying to reproduce the albums. So we'll often have different session players who played with us over the years. Right now, we've got a guy called Paul Keenan on the drums, and he played with us all through A Song's a City and Black Fingernails Red Wine, and went off and had many, many babies. And now he's back playing with us again, which is great. And then we've got a guy called Timothy Nelson who plays keyboards with us at the moment. And he's an amazing singer-songwriter in his own right. So even that is a great chemistry, you just getting different combinations of people together, you just know when it's right. And yeah, even with our session band at the moment, it's a really great combo of people.
So I'm going to take you back to your first gig in 97, the University of WA, when you won that heat and then you went to the final in Sydney and you won the national final. Would you say that was a turning point for you or just a stepping stone along the way?
Well, I guess it kind of put a bit of wind in our sails, but we started thinking, wouldn't it be nice if we won the campus band competition? And that was a big deal in Perth in the late 90s because Perth was so isolated from everywhere in the world at that point in time. So to get a plane ticket out of Perth was a pretty big deal. And if we won the campus band competition, we would get a plane ticket to the national finals. So we did it and we won the whole thing. And that was like our first 3 or 4 shows that we'd ever played. So we were like, okay, we're in 100%. And luckily from that competition we won, part of the prize was we got a recording, and with that recording we went to Sydney and recorded the Sweater EP, and that the title track got picked up by Jane Gazzo on Triple J, and then we were away. Basically, we just started.
The rest is history.
That's right.
Wastelands in 2013, the album, and then in 2020 the Say Something single. And now, have you noticed any changes between then and now with the whole recording process, the industry? Because we've had COVID in there.
Yeah, yes, we did. I mean, when we took a break in 2013, I mean, we had been on this 2-year cycle of, write a record, record the record, tour the record, and around we went. And I think we kind of felt, in the air that we didn't want to stop being Eskimo Joe, but we were like, this feels like a good time to just kind of disappear for a little while and maybe have people miss us. And so we all went off and did some other projects. I produced other bands and I've done some solo records. Joel has done a whole lot of writing and recording with other bands. Yeah, it was funnily enough, during the whole COVID experience that we were like, well, wouldn't it be cool to write another song? And me and Joel kind of got together one afternoon and did something, and it felt good. And that was the Say Something single. So we put that out right in the midst of, the full-on COVID affair. And then did another song called 99 Ways, but it wasn't really until we put out the third of those songs a year ago called The First Time. That was, post-COVID. It's a really funny thing, even if you've had big records, like records that have stayed on the ARIA charts for weeks and weeks, there's something about getting in front of a live audience that gives you this reminder of your musical identity, is the best way to say it. And so when we went out and started playing shows, and finally the world opened up a bit, and we were playing this show called Good Things, and it was a huge gig, and there was like big day out style crowds. It was amazing. And it was just like such a buzz, that we went home and we were like, yeah, we want to write a song that sounds good in front of an audience like that. And that's where we started. We started, playing songs and then going out and going, well, that worked. What if we did that on the next song? And on we went. So we did this song The First Time, and it just felt like the most electric kind of return to form that we'd had in a while.
Like rejuvenated.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've just been nominated for an APRA award for this year, and that's a huge accolade. Even, not that we expect to win, but just to have a seat at the table is pretty amazing after almost 30 years. So on the back of that, we were like, well, this is great. People are enjoying it again. And it was the opposite to that time when we decided to take a break, where we're like, it feels like people are really enjoying us, like a multi-generational kind of amount of people, like from 8 to 80-year-olds are into our music now. So let's put out another song. And so we did with this new song, Miracle Cure. And that song, again, was like a reaction to the gigs that we were playing. Last year, we did about a 30-odd date acoustic tour across the country, where we did this big storytelling kind of show where we played the songs, but in their more bare-bone version in these beautiful country town theatres everywhere. And then backstage, we had acoustic guitars, so we just chipped away at a song that became Miracle Cure. And that was really inspired and influenced by being in front of, the people that we were in front of and telling the stories, and also being in this vast Australian landscape, So all of these things kind of seep into your songwriting. As far as, your question goes about, what's changed in the music industry between then and now, when we took a break, it was just at the beginning of the massive social media and streaming services being a big, right? So we kind of stepped away at the end of the traditional album cycle, sell some physical copies, go out and promote it, do in-stores. And so I feel like now we're kind of playing a little bit of catch up, So if you look at the amount of people who listen to us on Spotify, you're into the millions, but, we probably don't have as many people following us on social media because of the era that we came from. It's all catching up pretty quickly, but it's just a different landscape, but the rules are the same. You find your band that you love, you get obsessed with them, you try and consume as much as you can and go see them play live shows. The difference now is, you've got to get all of these people from all these different places and funnel them into one place so they know where you are and what you're doing. And that's just the continuous evolving thing of the music industry. But it's more about live shows now, as far as, bands making a crust out of what they do. You got to go out and play a gig if you want to pay your mortgage.
Get in front of the fans.
Exactly.
Still Rocking It podcast with that radio chick, Cheryl Lee. We obviously will play the Miracle Cure before the podcast is out. But right now, let's hear For the First Time, and then back to speak to Kav again straight after this.
Drinking on a Saturday night used to be so easy. Don't you want to feel like it's the first time?
I really, really love this. We'll talk about the song Miracle Cure, but I saw on your socials that your wife, Beth, is your Miracle Cure. Aw, how did you two guys meet?
We're both second-time rounders, so we both were married, had previous marriages, and had very young kids when we met each other. But our two youngest kids became best friends. For anyone who's got kids, it's like when you find two kids, like when they're 3 years old and they're happy playing for hours on end, you're like, this is amazing. Another gin and tonic? Why not? You know what I mean? We got into this groove of just hanging out all the time because our youngest kids just loved hanging out with each other. And eventually, we were in denial probably for a long period of time, but then we fell in love, and then we had to inform all the kids that they were now brothers and sisters, and they were like, what? That was, about 10 years ago now, so we're literally further down the track.
Congratulations. And how many kids altogether? Is it like the Partridge Family?
Well, there's 4 of them, so yeah.
No, the Brady Bunch?
Bit of a Brady Bunch situation for sure.
That's lovely. It is a fabulous song, and it comes with a really groovy film clip as well. So where can they find that film clip and have a listen and a look at the song?
Well, YouTube, which is one of my favourite places to peruse is where you'd find the video clip. The coolest thing is that, we recorded the song in my little studio in Fremantle, and then the video clip is recorded literally next door at this big art gallery that's kind of attached to my studio. So it all kind of happened in this little place. But I was really inspired, especially with the whole traveling around Australia, of this idea of what I was calling Australian Gothic. I'd just gone to see, Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, and I loved the kind of, the Gothic nature of it. But then looking at Australia, we've got these vast landscapes and this kind of vacuum, that exists between, the original Australians and the settlers. And I think it's an interesting and very Australian story to explore. So I kind of tried to bring all of that imagery and that feeling and into the photo shoot that we did for the song, and as well as the feeling of the song and as well as the video clip.
Was that in the historic Old Customs House?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Old Customs House is this amazing building in the middle of Fremantle that they gave to the arts when Fremantle had the America's Cup. And when the America's Cup came to Fremantle, it kind of changed Fremantle forever. They had this, a couple of derelict buildings, and, the government at the time made the very wise choice to give this huge building to the arts. And now that's where my studio is, and it's a huge art space.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
You are listening to Still Rocking It, the podcast with Cheryl Lee.
I won't keep you in suspense any longer. Here it is, the new song by Eskimo Joe, Miracle Cure. Check it out on YouTube, and of course you can get it from all the usual places. And then we're back to finish up with Kav Temperley, founding member.
I've been looking for a miracle cure, a silver bullet through a heart that's so pure.
Do you have any Spinal Tap moments? Have you got, like when you're performing, is there something that you have to have on your rider or you're not going on, you guys?
Look, we're pretty practical and not too precious. We've been doing it for enough years that we just appreciate being there a lot of the time. I mean, there was probably times, where there's a mixture of rising to fame and anxiety that hits at the same time, where we probably had some ridiculous moments where we overly thought things, but they're very romantic, Spinal Tap moments, just taking ridiculous amounts of gear on the road with us that we probably didn't need, or having millions of people on the road with us who we probably didn't need with us.
Entourage.
Exactly. These days we're pretty low maintenance. We rock up to a show. We want the show to sound and look amazing. We want everyone who comes to the show to feel like they've had the best time ever. We're in the cheer me up business. So that's how we approach it. We're just like, well, our job is to make sure everyone is feeling good. So we don't tend to get too ridiculous about things these days. And I'm just trying to think, even though we're ridiculous, and of course we're musos, so we're complete weirdos, but we're probably some of the more down-to-earth musos that you're going to meet. There's a couple of them that you'll meet around Australia, and they're funnily enough all from our era of bands. Bands like The Living End and Jebediah and those kinds of. You meet those people, and they'll be the nicest, most chilled-out people you meet. It's people who come from, who are, brand new to the industry, like the ones just on the way up. I think you'll find they're having the biggest Spinal Tap moments out of everyone.
You're obviously sort of hit your groove again. So, is this maybe the first song, like an album in the waters there?
Not that we planned on. We're at the moment, because we kind of, obviously do all these other creative projects outside of Eskimo Joe. We have lots of multiple things that we do. We've kind of worked out that we can probably get away with writing and recording 1, maybe 2 songs a year. So at this rate, we should have an album in about 12 years' time.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that has changed, because previously it was all about the albums.
Look, I love making records, and I'll probably make records in my solo world until the day I die. But I guess for us, we're not a band who goes in there and just jams. We're like, yeah, let's just jam on this riff. Yeah, cool, that's the record. We are fastidious, and we'll go over every chord and every lyric to try and write the best possible song we can. That's just our process. We grew up listening to the Beatles and those kinds of bands, and so we take songwriting and record production really seriously. because we are so annoyingly fastidious, unless we were going to like cancel everything in our lives and just work on that for 6 months to a year, then, I think one song, we can do that to our level without messing about. And it's not about that we don't want to make records anymore. It's just that, we know that we can do one really good song if we focus on it completely. And so that's just where we're at. And we're pretty cool with that because we've got lots of albums that we put out before. At this stage in our career, maybe we'll go do another record one day. Who knows? But the way we do things, we just take way too long just to get one song done. So yeah, one song a year, I reckon you'll get from us.
Yeah, well, look forward to that's a scoop, everyone. There's an album out in 12 years' time. You heard it first here.
Exactly, and another song maybe next year. So
what I was hoping you were going to say was, there's an album and a tour. So any plans of touring?
Like, I've been away every weekend for about the last year and a half. So we've just finished epic amounts of shows. I think we played every festival you can play. So we'll have a bit of a creative little downtime. We'll probably work on some new music. Hopefully that'll turn into another song that'll come out sometime soon. But we're getting ready for 20 years of Black Fingernails Red Wine. So next year will be that, and we'll make sure we do some touring around that. We'll make a big fuss about that record because that was an album that was, really important to us and really important to our fans.
Absolutely. Where should they go to keep an eye on that? There's a Eskimo Joe website?
Yeah, there's that. But, people don't really hang out on websites too much these days. Just
social media.
Yeah. Instagram or Facebook is probably where we're most prolific, though, we're dipping our toe in the TikTok. We're in all those places. And, YouTube, we're trying to kind of post a lot more on YouTube because YouTube shorts are great and all the rest of it. But really, Instagram or Facebook if you want to keep an eye on what's going on.
I've got no idea how long we've been. I'm sure my time is up. Is there anything else that you wanted to say that we haven't covered?
Yeah, go out there and stream Miracle Cure and hopefully we'll see you all on the road soon.
It got its first play on my Monday night show last night.
Oh, wicked. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And we'll keep spinning it. It's a great song. I really love it. Well done.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you when you are next in our town. I'll see you down the front.
Yeah, sounds wicked. Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Still Rocking It podcast with that radio chick, Cheryl Lee. We're going to go out with one of my favourites. This one is courtesy of Triple M, 30 Years of Rock, and it's a live version from the sea. Here they are, Eskimo Joe.
Ooh, I'm so spaced out today. I could have slept for days.
You're with Cheryl Lee, that radio chick. Thank you so much for joining me on the Still Rocking It podcast. Hope to catch you again next time. Get out when you can, support Aussie music, and I'll see you down the front.